listener production.
Hey, I'm Sasha Barbagat. Thanks for joining me for this episode of The Briefing. Right now, a quick scroll of your social media feed can feel like you've stumbled into an ad for the Amalfi Coast or London. Yep, it's the time of year when those more fortunate than us pack their bags for an overseas summer adventure.
In general, you're starting to see every part of this world be visited. And so for Australians, places like South America and Africa are much more appealing once we've been to Europe and places like that.
Later on in today's ep, we are analysing the travel trends we're seeing so far this year, but also asking where to next. First, though, it is time to get into today's biggest stories, including Joe Biden's withdrawal from the presidential race with Simon Beaton. It is Monday, the 22nd of July.
Hey Sash, yeah, that's right. So after weeks of speculation and pressure, Joe Biden has announced he is withdrawing from the presidential race. The US president confirming his decision in a statement posted on X early this morning our time. It's long, but here's some of it. While it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. It has been the greatest honour of my life to serve as your president. In a follow-up tweet, Biden formally endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to take up the reins as the nominee for the Democrats, saying, "Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this."
Huge news. Not entirely unexpected, but it was a long time coming.
Oh, yeah.
So then the question is, what happens next? That is a great question because this is the first time a president has withdrawn from a re-election bid since 1968. Now, we will know come the Democratic National Convention, like what the Republicans had last week, which is happening from August 19 in Chicago. That is where delegates for the party will choose who they want to lead them into the November election, and the nominee's running mate will also be selected. While Biden has endorsed Harris, the nomination could be contested. Now, this caps off an absolutely insane week in US politics, starting, of course, with the assassination attempt on Donald Trump last Sunday, then the conservative circus that was the Republican National Convention. Now, speaking of Trump, he has reacted to this news this morning. Here's what he posted to Truth Social. He said, "Crooked Joe Biden was not fit to run for president and is certainly not fit to serve and never was. He only attained the position of president by lies, fake news, and not leaving his basement. All those around him, including his doctor and the media, knew he wasn't capable of being president, and he wasn't." He went on to say, "We will suffer greatly because of his presidency, make America great again." According to CNN, who had a phone call with the former president, he thinks Harris will be easier to beat, and that Joe Biden will go down as the single worst president by far in the history of our country.
Now, that's not the sentiment being felt by Democrats who are coming out to praise Joe Biden, thank him for his service to the country and talk up his legacy. Among them, California Governor Gavin Newsom, who could also make a tilt for the nomination. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker have also been named as contenders, but that would be a dangerous route for the Democrats. Harris is seen as a safer bet because she's already tested and vetted.
Yeah, and she's 59, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, of course, 81. Now, this comes after that disastrous debate appearance by Biden against Trump. And ever since then, I mean, this was, over 3 weeks ago now, he has faced pressure. He came out, he was defiant. He said, "No, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to run." I was reading reports as late as last night saying that he's not going. He's ramping up his campaign efforts. So what has happened in the last few hours? Who knows? We have heard sort of from his wife, Dr. Jill Biden. Now, she was seen as the one who could potentially convince him. She's quite a trusted advisor of his, not just as his wife, but, she has firmed that position up within, his coterie of important people around him. She's the one that he was likely to listen to. She didn't say anything in the post. She just posted a love heart emoji along with his statement. So this is huge news. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to come of this. But there you go, Joe Biden officially withdrawing.
A father and his 2-year-old daughter have died after a pram carrying twins rolled onto train tracks at a station in Sydney yesterday afternoon. The second twin has survived. Here's the New South Wales Premier, Chris Minns.
The father died from an extraordinary, instinctive act of bravery. That's not going to bring him or his little daughter back, but it shouldn't go unremarked upon. In the face of a terrible, terrible accident, he gave his own life to try and save his children.
Witnesses say the family had used a lift to move onto the station platform. The parents took their hands off the pram momentarily and it rolled onto the tracks. The second twin and the mother were not injured but were taken to hospital in a stable condition. New South Wales Police are not treating the incident as suspicious at this time, and a report is being prepared for the coroner. And the family, as well as trained staff, are all being offered support.
Australian Formula One driver Oscar Piastri has won his first Formula One Grand Prix. The 23-year-old from Melbourne qualified second alongside teammate Lando Norris, but took the lead on the opening lap. Team strategy meant Norris was ahead late in the race, but the team leader told Norris to let Piastri pass to claim the checkered flag.
It is Oscar Piastri, Grand Prix winner in Hungary, and for the first time takes the checkered flag and will stand on the top step of a Grand Prix podium.
Sir Lewis Hamilton finished third and championship leader Max Verstappen finished fifth. It's quite an elite group, Simon, of Aussie Formula One race winners. He joins Sir Jack Brabham, Alan Jones, Mark Webber and Daniel Ricciardo.
And the fallout from Friday's massive global tech outage is expected to be felt for days. A quick recap, computers using Windows went down around the world after an update to an antivirus program run by a company called CrowdStrike. The outage hit airlines, banks, hospitals, supermarkets, broadcasters, as well as personal computers. Yeah, it is still too early to say what the damage bill will be from this, Simon, and it is being called the biggest IT crash ever seen. But early estimates are putting the damages up over $1 billion. Now, CrowdStrike has apologised, but it hasn't said whether it intends to provide compensation to affected customers. This was nuts on Friday night, Simon. 5,000 flights around the world were cancelled. Lawsuits are possible if you think of all the businesses that lost revenue. It was being felt not only here in Australia, but right around the world. Now, there is a warning out about scammers potentially trying to take advantage of what has happened. And the Minister for Home Affairs and Cybersecurity, Claire O'Neill, did post to X yesterday saying it's very important that we are extremely cautious of any unexpected texts, calls or emails claiming to be assistance with this issue. So just a reminder, treat everything that comes in with extreme skepticism. And she also thanked IT workers. And I'm going to shout out our IT workers here at Listener. I got in this morning and there was this huge section set up for everyone who needed help today if their laptops weren't working or whatever, and they were here all weekend trying to get, and now it's not just podcasts, there's also radio stations who need to broadcast live. So shout out to our IT workers here. They do an amazing job. Thank you so much for getting us all back on air so we can bring you the news you need. Hey, that is it for the headlines. Thank you so much, Simon, for joining me. Next up, it's our deep dive looking at the travel trends we're seeing at the moment, but also we're going to ask where to next. You wouldn't be alone in feeling like everyone you know is overseas right now. Australians have long had a love affair with a hot girl or guy summer while the rest of us shiver back home. Last month, more than 1.7 million people flew out of Australia, according to the Bureau of Statistics. Europe particularly has been an extremely popular destination in the wake of those long years under COVID lockdowns and travel restrictions. London was the third most popular place we flew to overseas in 2023, with Rome and Athens also making the top 10. So, what sort of numbers are we seeing this year, and has the cost of living crisis had any impact? Joining me now is Australian Travellers Quentin Long to talk about our love affair with Europe and also get us in the know about what's set to emerge as the next must-visit destinations in 2025. Plus, he's going to let us in on some hacks to find cheaper airfares and travel deals. Quentin, welcome to the briefing. So, am I right in thinking every Aussie is in Europe right now?
It feels that way because of social media. Look, and certainly this is the peak time for Australians to be in the Northern Hemisphere. And right now that really does mean Europe, because North America is not actually the great sort of centre for Australians travelling at this period of time. And out of COVID, we've seen people just prioritise travel. And so add that to your social media feeds and everyone's like, yeah, look at me, I'm having a great time, sucks to be you. And so it does feel like everyone's there, but hey, look, we're here. There are a lot of people overseas.
Yeah. Where is everyone going right now? And when I say right now, I mean, what are the kind of travel trends we've seen in 2024 so far?
One of the really interesting things is everyone was thinking that, cost of living pressures, travel's going to soften off. And it hasn't really. And why that is because coming out of COVID, you really miss what you don't have. And so there's this great sense that travel is so important to me, I'm going to quarantine that budget as much as I can. Europe is where everyone is because it's the Northern Hemisphere summer. And in reality, there's about 5 or 6 countries where we really gravitate to. Italy is always number one. We do survey after survey after survey of our readers. And the number one destination everyone wants to go to, Italy. It used to be France about 10 years ago, but that's been taken over by Italy. It goes Italy, France, then Great Britain. And usually Great Britain's just to sort of, I'll have to go there, I have to see friends, all that sort of stuff. And then Greece, which is the one that came out of COVID really, really strong, and then Spain. And what we're seeing is a bit of growth in Portugal as well. And the reason for Portugal is it's about affordability. Your dollar does go a little bit further in Portugal, particularly because Eastern Europe is actually kind of a no-go area right now, thanks to our friend Vlad.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the cost of living factor. It's all we've heard about for the last 2 years, how bad it is, how no one has any money to spend. Are we seeing any sort of impact on travel numbers, or have they remained steady since we came out of travel restrictions out of COVID?
Look, there's been marginal impact in this, and that's because the people who are going to Europe are the ones most insulated from cost of living pressures, right? So that right now, this is the Northern Hemisphere summer, so that's when those people go. But also that other factor, which is people really prioritise travel. It's a life well lived involves travel, so I'm not going to get that budget and let it go away. And also the cost of aviation, as I said before, coming down helps people get further in their travel. So there is some marginal impact. The other thing that happens, I should also mention, Sasha, is that people will tend to downgrade a little bit. So instead of going for, if I'm going for 4 weeks, I'm going to spend a week in a 5-star hotel, maybe it's not a 5-star hotel, it's a 4-star hotel. And so you start to see that happen as well. But just quickly on the aviation, I am absolutely gobsmacked at what some of the prices are. If you are flexible, you can get some crazy deals. I saw one recently out of Brisbane into Europe, $1,100 return. Now that is 2019 pricing. That is crazy. Now look, if you want to know what it was EVA Air, which is the Taiwanese carrier. You have to spend 24 hours in Taipei. But hey, if you, is that a compromise you're willing to make? Some people would say yes. And by the way, what would you do for 24 hours? Have you ever heard about the street food in Taiwan?
No, I haven't.
One of the craziest things you can eat in the street food in Taipei is chicken testicles.
Okay. I've done chicken hearts, but not chicken testicles. I'll add it to the list.
I think I will pass on that one. They will eat anything and everything out of a bird. But anyway, there you go. So, and they're the general trends that we're seeing. And then what's interesting is what happens to places like Southeast Asia, and they continue to be relatively strong. Fiji came out of the blocks amazingly well out of COVID. Hawaii is an interesting one. Just thinking about the Pacific market, it's priced itself out, and so less Australians are going to Hawaii, and they're shifting back into Thailand and Bali and places like that, maybe Fiji.
I want to talk about, the sustainability of how popular European travel is for Australians. In a couple of senses, we saw recently tourists targeted by locals in Barcelona who are extremely sick of the over-tourism in their city, but also just over-tourism in general. I was there last year and I went in the shoulder season hoping to not only avoid the crowds, but also hopefully have a bit less of an impact and maybe contribute to the local economy at a more quiet time. It was bustling. Like there were people everywhere. I mean, how long can Europe sustain this popularity?
Is the billion-dollar question, Sasha, because the challenge is what do you do about local economies and how do you actually sustain them? Because tourism is a great wealth creator and generator, and it's a great business because it is renewable. In other words, You don't sell it once, you sell it 365 times a year. The challenge is the numbers of people. And so there's a lot going on in terms of how do we actually police this. There's two scenarios I see in what they can do. And the first one is it's going to be government-led. It has to be government-led. It is going to come down to policies. The first one is that you price it, so people have to pay extra. The challenge with that is that travel then becomes an elitist indulgence. And that means that if you don't have the money, you don't get to these destinations, which is a shame, but maybe the only solution. The alternative solution that I can see is you go into a lottery system and where you have to, apply for access. Again, both scenarios pretty hard to deal with, but that's the challenge. The interesting thing is that shoulder season is now pretty, as you experience, is pretty bulky, right? It's almost close to peak. What's really interesting, I think, is it actually detracts from the experience at peak. So I wouldn't go to Europe. Well, I wouldn't go to Italy, Paris, France, Spain. I would not go in July, August. It would just be too much. And that was borne out last year when you saw the Americans there. That may calm down a bit going into the future with cost of living, but also everyone has been, and then they'll say, oh, I've already been, I don't need to go again, because it was such a burst on. But it also drives people into other markets. And I'll give you an example. Norway is one of those markets that its peak season is usually, weirdly, for Australians, is the Northern Lights. So actually they have a lot more capacity in that peak season of Europe, but whether it's affordable for Australians is another question.
Look, we've talked about where we're having too much of an impact and where the current kind of must-travel destinations are. What are the emerging trends when it comes to destinations for Australian travellers? Where might we be looking to go in 2025, 2026?
In general, you're starting to see every part of this world be visited. And so for Australians, places like South America and Africa are much more appealing once we've been to Europe and places like that. Canada has obviously always been a great destination for Australians. What we're starting to see there is that they're going over to the East Coast. And so starting to see places like Quebec, Newfoundland and Labrador, that sort of really far-flung destinations for Australians. Then it does come down to geopolitical challenges and whether, we were starting to go into that Eastern European countries, but that sort of paused after our friend Vlad did what he did. So in general, like someone just went to Pakistan, there's a destination that most people didn't think was possible, but is absolutely emerging. Colombia, Peru, these places are starting to really gain traction because they are novel to the Australian market. And that's great.
All right, well, now I want to be selfish, not only for me, but for all of our listeners who are sitting on the train or driving home from work and they want to plan their next holiday. What are the best hacks that you can rattle off in the next 2 minutes to save us money on airfares or find us amazing deals? What don't we know yet?
Marry well. Just marry a pilot.
Too late for me. Well, he's great.
Damn.
He's great, but he's not a wealthy man. Yeah, damn.
Yeah, right. Damn. The holy grail of a great deal comes down to a couple of simple factors that really I think most of us kind of know. And there's nothing more that I can give you but be flexible. If you have a specific place you have to be at a specific time, then you should book as soon as you really know you can, and don't leave it too late. So anything within 3 months is going to be more expensive than anything after, 3 months before travel. Sign up to all the newsletters, sign up to all the deals, look out for those things. Don't ignore your travel agent or advisor. Those guys actually are plugged into the industry and have experience. Now, they tend not to make any money out of aviation these days, so just be aware of that. But if you have a great travel agent, ask them and say, look, I want to do this or I'm thinking about this. Can you keep an eye out for anything that you see? And then they'll be able to help you out with that.
Quentin Long, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks, Sasha. Anytime. Lovely to be with you. Have a great day.
That was Quentin Long from Australian Traveller speaking to me there. And that is all for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. A reminder, if you want to keep up with our other content, we put out full episodes of our weekend briefing chats on YouTube. Search Listener Newsroom. And you can also find us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Sasha Barbagat. Catch you next time.
listener.